Hi, thanks for joining us for the second episode of the Edge podcast for CHROs. My name is Varun, and with me I've got my co-host Nisha. Tonight we're joined by Sunita Lal, who is the CHR of Aether Energy. Sunita Lal is a human resources professional and organizational culture expert with a keen interest in the space of unconscious process in individuals, groups, and systems. She's the author of Dotting the Blemish and Other Stories, a collection of short stories about women that reflect and comment on the inherent prejudices that we have existent in the society, right? At Aether, right, she's currently leading people, operations, and strategy, facilitating the establishment of values and systems, while like, also exploring and curating the organization's culture. So, Nisha, over to you. Please welcome our guest, and I think we can quickly get right into the meat of this episode.
Right. Sunita, thank you so much. I think it's a real privilege and honor for us to be talking to you, in our second episode of season two. We're really excited. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you very much for inviting, and thank you very much for your interest in Aether. And only one disclaimer: I'm not an expert in culture, but I'm passionate about culture.
I think that makes you an expert. Anything one is passionate about.
Yeah.
So, Varun, do you want to go first? Let's start.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think let's sort of begin this episode. I think with some of the basic building blocks, right? Which is, I think every CHR and HR at this point in time has one question in mind, right? Is what an organization builds, right? How's that really connected to the culture that a team or a function sort of follows?
See, organizations either are focusing on services or they're focusing on their products. So they are hardware engineering companies, they are software engineering companies, there are services organizations. So inherent to that business, there is something which is very strong. Like for example, if you're in a manufacturing organization, efficiency is very important. You disproportionately focus on that. If you're in the financial sector, then governance is very important. So inherent to the business, there is some values that come very attached to the business. It's not that the others are not required or other organizations don't have to focus on them. But the nature of the business will actually pivot you to look at certain things to make it your DNA. Okay. At Aether, the interesting part is that we have the hardware engineering company and also software engineering company. It is also a manufacturing organization because we manufacture our vehicles. Then there is a focus about business, and the sales and how do we reach to our customers, customer experience. So it's an amalgamation of all of this. That makes it slightly I don't say difficult. It is different when we say what is then unifying everyone at Aether. What do we pivot towards? Okay, and which will help us to build great products, build us great experience for our customers, and build us produce amazing vehicles in our factories. What is that? See, that is the only thing. So it does influence what is the business of an organization. It influences the culture because it has to align with the model in which you operate.
Hey, Sunita, sort of just build on that, right? Essentially, what I feel also is that it's a way to sort of fine tune the way that every individual member and every team sort of reacts to certain business problems, and you sort of react, and you're making the reaction a gold standard, and that eventually cascades into or snowballs into building like a culture into the way that you do things. For example, that tomorrow if there's a bottleneck in your production line, you have an ether way of doing things, and I think every business sort of ultimately builds that edge, right? So is that a fair way to sort of sum this up to?
Yes, it is. One is Aether way of doing it. There are other pieces inherent to business. Certain things are sacrosanct. Certain things are like, for example, safety is very important in a manufacturing organization, but when we are in an R&D setup, I don't think people think safety is important because it doesn't come that space. So how do you then look at each of these things and bring it together as a shared space for values, and behaviors. One is Ather way of doing it. Each organization has their way of doing it. Some organization hustle a lot. Some organization actually prefer to go plan and go get into. So it is their way of doing it, and that becomes inherently their culture. Okay, they will never jump into it without having clarity. Some organization jump and then figure out the clarity. So it is, it is that culture of that organization. But there is also the business context that also builds another layer on that. Yeah, what you say is true. And on top of it, there's also this one.
Though it brings me to this point, then, Sunita, is there a universal way? I mean, you spoke about the two ways people can build culture, right? Just do it and then that's the culture, or decide that this is going to be the culture and that's the culture, right? So, is there a universal way, or what is actually, if we're talking about the two ways, then I'm not sure if there is a universal way. But what, according to you, is better, or what, if there's a kind of a framework or a manual you think you would like to propose, and how should people then decide that this is the right way for me, right? And therefore, if you can explain it through how you built culture at Ather, and just take us through that, it'll be just with some examples. I think we'll be really excited to learn.
See, there's no universal way. There are a lot of frameworks out there, and it is not that one is good, the other is bad. It is always relevant to the organization you are. And also, when I say organization, it also means the journey of the organization. Are you a startup? Are you an established organization? Do you have already stated values, and now you are going back and checking them out after some 20 years or something, 10 years, saying, are they relevant? Do I have to add, subtract, stuff like that? So at what part of, where is the organization journey is important. And also organization belief system is also very important. Based on that, you pick up a method of doing it, they're saying that this is it is also has to be a method which the leadership is all aligned and they all are bought into it, because it's not the CHRO's job to be working on culture. The person holds it, on behalf of the leadership. We have to be remembering that, it is a collective leadership's job. We all are committed as leaders to be owning that piece. The CHRO actually holds it for on behalf of the collective leadership, but all of us have to be committed to that. At Ather, what we have done is we have looked at the bottoms-up approach. We looked at saying, when I joined Ather almost 4 years back, we were very, very young, and even then people were very vocal about talking about culture, saying this works in culture, this doesn't work at Ather, this is how Ather's culture is. So the word culture is very very often used, and I was surprised saying that, hey, so many people are so passionate about it. They were all very young also. So for me to understand the organization and also build the relationship, and I looked at a method where I said, okay, let us meet people, explore and understand what is in their mind, the picture in mind they have about when they say culture at Ather. What are they talking about? So we met around 30% to 35% of the organization as dyads, triads, and as focus groups and cross-functional teams coming together, and ask them the question, what do you mean this is Ather, this is not Ather, culture at Ather? What is the picture in mind you have? And there's a lot of information that came out, and it gave us it gave us such a huge information for us to look at. And that's the place where it was like a treasure trove, that's the place where we went in and said, okay, let's analyze this data, because there is so much of information here. And that was the first step for us to actually articulate what are our values and how do you demonstrate these values through this behaviors. So we articulated values and behaviors, and the overarching theme around this as calling it as think as a species. And each of these values themselves were actually verbatim used by some of the team members. Like, for example, there is something called listen. So there, and the team member said, don't be a jerk, listen. We curated it a little bit and said, listen, really listen. That's a behavior. We said, when you say be nice was one of our value, and below that the behavior is listening. You have to listen. And second, we said we should not accept mediocrity. Whatever about yourself or whether the others, don't accept, raise the bar high. So we articulated the behavior because trust by default. We were very clear saying that when you say this value, what does that value mean? And how do you demonstrate these values and live them? So most of our values and behaviors were actually sentences used by team members. And then we picked it up, and all the sentences often used, which also said more people wanted it. And then it was an enormous exercise, when looked at thematic analysis and all that stuff, and came up with themes, and then landed with our values, behaviors, and the overarching theme called Think as a Species. Remember telling that, don't think about yourself, me, myself, my department. Can we think beyond that? That's the passion with which we worked,
Those are some very interesting points. Actually, Nisha had a follow-up to this. Nisha, I'll probably go after this with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, one thing struck me, Sunita, like all of us, right? We abuse this term culture a little bit, no? We keep saying culture, culture. What is culture, Sunita? Can you just talk a little bit about what is culture? Like, what do you mean by culture?
Culture is culture. People is actually, you said it right. We abuse, but we do use that word often, not realizing it's not an input. It's an output. Okay, the input to that culture is in an organization. I will limit it to the organization in itself. Is how do we draft our policies? How do we define our goals? How do we call out performance management frameworks? How do we make decisions? How does information cascade? Or are there any hidden hierarchies? All these things actually are inputs that actually make the culture happen. The weaving of culture, I always call it. The decisions we make, the decisions we don't make, the way we solve problem, the way we negotiate boundaries, the way information flows, the way everyone talks about empowerment. What is empowerment actually? Do you really give people to make the decisions at the point, and are people willing to make the decision? Because see, you might tell, oh, please make the decision, but if you're not giving them the right support, making it possible, they're not going to make any decisions. So how, when there is when someone makes a mistake, how is the organization reacting to it? How are leaders connecting with their team members? These are all inputs that churn out what you call the cultural fabric. And these inputs, there is a precursor to these inputs. These precursor to that input is your belief systems, the prejudice you have. Okay, what are the biases you hold in your mind? These are all the ones that leads you to behave in a certain way in an organization. Culture is the emotional and physical experience of a person in an organization. Actually, they experience you, and that experience is actually the culture. How do I experience the organization? So it is not that I have a lever that I can automatically tomorrow morning shift it and then make it possible, and wish away. It's no magic, I can't. It is a hard work, You've got to do it again and again and again, consistently go back to it and live those values. And I feel that it happens in the dining table in families, isn't it? We talk, we discuss, we argue. But we come together again next day again to the dining table to have the dinner. I think for me it represents that. How do we work on it again and again? Not give up, not look exhausted, not think someone will fix it. No one will fix it. We have to fix it.
So to sort of build on to what Nisha and to what you also said, right? The way that I think I would explain culture to somebody younger, or I think in a word, I think that would be psychological safety. That, hey, is this culture enabling you to do that? Because if that's there, you get to do your best work in life. And I think
Yeah.
that's what continuously creates a competitive advantage. So which sort of brings a great segue into the sort of question that had in mind, was that um, the culture building at startup level versus the one that happens at an enterprise level or to a large organized level, how different is that? I mean, it's definitely two extreme points. But in terms of the stuff that we've discussed, like for example, in some of the cases, culture could be bottom up building. In some cases, that could be enforced right from the top. I mean, they probably hire somebody who's really experienced, the kind of new sheriff in town, and then he says that, hey, look, this is the way that things need to be done, and so things, right? Could you lay out the fine print of that?
See, in a startup, like you have a chance to start it fresh, and when an established organization, the hidden hierarchies run very, very deep. And as you are unearthing them, there is a lot of other things will start shaking. So then you have to, the fallout of which all of us have to hold it together. But interestingly, in a startup, it is always the founders, their beliefs that come into, seep into the system. Knowingly, unknowingly, what do they strongly believe is what is, without, it's not articulated. See, a startup, no one has time to sit and articulate about it. They would be rushing, and their passion, their belief, all that drives the initial, the first power is given only through that. And it builds on that. Like for example, at Aether, it is of course Tarun and Swapnil who actually had the strong belief. Even the fact that we have to work on culture was their belief, isn't it? They could have said, let us become this big, and then we will think about it, fixing it. We will never fix it. By then you're growing at a speed at which you're growing, and you will not have time to just take a pause and fix it. As I said, there is no lever to fix it also. So at a startup, I think initially it is the founders, then the first 50 who come inside, or first 100 who come inside, because the founders would have disproportionately invested in hiring. Now, the next set of leaders who are coming in have to disproportionately spend time in investing in hiring the type of people they want to hire. They can't outsource that responsibility to anyone. How do you hire? How do you actually have the focus on, because you are building large teams, in startup. Whereas in an established organization, it is about what got into the system. While there is stated ones on, and there probably something articulated values, but are we living by those values, or are we living by some other values? And those, are they helping us at all? Do the people, large community that is there out there, do they think that we live by our values? Okay, I think having the courage to go back and stand there. So once you become a great big enterprise, you also struggle for having that courage to go back and really do the type of conversation to understand, are we living by the values? Are the leaders committed to living by these values? At Aether, we go back to asking that question again and again, because we know we are not perfect, we are not there yet, but it's a journey for us. I think having the courage to go back and relook at oneself, and also willingness to shake some power centers, hidden hierarchies, and all that is what is required in an enterprise. By the time you become an enterprise, you really have the wherewithal to manage it better, but you will not do it because the courage is the difficult part. At startup, the courage is there. Sometimes what most startups struggle is that they will not have the right team to work on it. Probably they would not have invested in HR department itself. They would, in their mind, HR is all about recruiting and probably managing payroll. Between these two, nothing exists, So if you, and they'll think, I'll figure it out after some time, I will have time then. Really, it will not be, it's not possible. If you have not done it in the first few years of your journey, then you've lost it, You will become like that enterprise and then go all over there, We'll do that journey.
That's very interesting. So one of the things that really struck out to me in the entire thing was the fact that you often sort of review yourself, as a team, as a species, right? I think the setting the right feedback loops and trying to figure out, what is the how do we operationalize it? Do we have more retrospectives? Do we have a town hall wherein people can just talk about things that they'd like to do and stuff like this? My question to you, basically, as a follow up, of course, is how do you set the right feedback loops to sort of continuously, iterate on your culture over and over again? What are some of the frameworks that probably Aether or follows, or something that you've seen in your experience?
We do what we call culture conversations. They are a 90-minute conversation or 60-minute conversation, depending upon the size of the group. The group is only tired or diet, then we do a 60-minute conversation. If it's a focus group with 8 people or so, it is a 90-minute conversation. It is really honest conversation, We are and there it's curated in a certain way to get the best out of everyone's time there, and also get really seek feedback. And we do it once in 18 months. Go back to the larger community. It takes around 2 months to collect all the feedback and 1 month to do the analysis. Then we are so open, we just put it out in all hands saying that this is what verbatim, some of the verbatims we pick up. We do the thematic analysis and sentiment analysis. And we just put out the data out there saying this is what people are saying. And we will say what is the unconscious that is there in the system? What is the state of the system? If, for example, someone is saying, we don't believe in, we are becoming very process oriented. We are losing our identity of an innovative organization. We want to, it's a statement, okay? Lot of people say that we got to understand, explore and see where is the fear coming? What is the fear of the process? Is it because I'm going to lose my right to behave the way I want to behave because you have to adhere to a process? Or is it process looks uncool for you? Or the people who are defining process are looking uncool for you. So having those honest understanding what is deeper inside the system and pulling it out and presenting it, then putting up an action plan and taking around a year, again, a year for us to go over and work on it. And then go back again to ask these questions. And there are conversations, the culture conversations happened with many players, the POPs team, the HR team is called POPs team at Aether. POPs team members are there. Happens with founders. So, and all of us are very engaged in these conversations, and we look forward for the season, when it's like season 1, season 2, we look forward for that because we really have time to cross-functional teams come together, and sometimes they bash up, sometimes they're appreciative, and everything is welcome. And I think we curate it because reflective spaces we have to create to understand the emotional experiences of people. If we don't create that reflective space and also process the emotional experience, we are leaving them high and dry. Then we are doing some tick in the checkbox here to say that I'm going to work on culture. You have to really work really deeper to understand because it's a microcosm of a macro, So your organization is almost like a country or something for you. And if you want to really understand them deep, you have to understand what are the hidden biases there sitting, what are the perceptions, what is the behavior, what is driving what, and really you have to be interested in it first and spend time and really time. Time is the money to me. If you're not willing to spend the time, we have lost the plot.
Very, I think, thoughtful exercise. And the reason I say that, Sunita, is because one part of my job, I manage internal communications, or, at least used to for 4 years for a hospitality organization, right? And the reason I'm saying this is because I want to ask you a question related to that. And at Aether also, I see that as a parallel. When you are working with a manufacturing unit or when you're working with a corporate setup, and of course, you mentioned, and I love the point that you also included customers in culture, right? It's very unique, and I picked that up because I really liked it. So, can you tell us, if you have to put all of these people together and make them feel the culture, because culture is a feeling, right? It's like you said, an output. How do all of these people get to feel the same way when they're very different individuals?
Yeah, it is different, but if you come to our manufacturing plant and see, whether it is the operator who's operating the line or the design engineer who actually designed it or the manufacturing engineer who's part of it, all of them have the same passion, They all are very committed. They take a lot of pride in the brand called Ather, okay? Because it is really sweat and blood of a lot of people who actually made it happen. Ideally, you see that sort of pride probably with the founders, but I think it just went and cascaded down, and all of them who come and say, yeah, we struggle saying how do you curate it. Like we have today distribution partners who are distributors in many cities, and how do our partners actually sitting in different cities, how do they experience, how do we take this culture there and make it part of their world? Okay, how do we take to our suppliers and make them realize what Ather is? So as our suppliers, our distribution partners, our customers, all of them, for them to understand Ather, and this is what we stand for. And when we say think as a species, how deep it is inside. And we also miss our beats many times, and we are very self-critical about it, saying that we bash ourselves up and all that stuff. But inherently, how do you take it to all of is just look at all the culture, all the touch points, for each of them, and say in that touch point, how do they experience Ather? How do they experience when they come to our experience center? How do they, a customer coming to our experience center, talking to our product specialist, our customer who's meeting our after sales service team member, how do they actually experience Ather in all these touch points, in all these interactions? How do they experience? And that is what we have to focus on. What are the touch points, and how are they experiencing the organization in the systems we develop, and the policies we craft, and also the interactions we have? How do we actually curate it at that place? That's where you're able to build the consistency. And it will take time. And sometimes we will slip. Then again, we have to get up and say, okay, we have to be honest in saying we slipped. We can't do some jugaad and try to mask it and all that stuff.
Extending that same line of thought, right? What is the role of leadership basically in curating culture for the organization? And essentially, how does the CHRO sort of come into place, or bridging the gap between the leadership and their vision and the people itself? I mean, again, the one point that you mentioned much earlier in our conversation was the fact that, hey, CHROs essentially act sort of as a policing or a mediator, or as a function that just sort of sustains the momentum. But then is there anything more to the role itself, and more to what the HR or the people function can do to sort of bridge the gap?
See, I think this at Ather we call this as weaving culture, because it has to be as passionately driven as a handloom weaver weaves a sari. It has to be that careful. So when you weave culture, it is collective leadership that has to come together. The CHRO holds that on behalf of the collective leadership. But it's the role of all the leaders. There's no escape from that. Okay, it's not that I'm so busy, so I can't be looking at it. I want. Then it will take a dip. Today, if you look at my head of my business, chief business officer, Ravneet, he actually talks about it in every conversation he does, and when he meets our partners in the cities that we expand, because it is very close to every one of our hearts, And what is the role of the CHRO? The role of the CHRO is being very passionate about it, and also being very dispassionate when he or she looks at it, realizing it is being dropped, being honest, saying that, because in the executive council, there is only one person sitting whose role is to look at people practices. Okay. Now, when people talk about saying that CHROs should understand business, they have to understand this, they have to understand it. I think it's slightly funny, if you think your CHRO doesn't understand the business and is actually hiring and also putting together a performance management system, is also working on all the learning and development, capability building, all that without knowing your business, it's too funny. I mean, these are rhetorics, you should get beyond all that and just say, what is the role of the CHRO in that executive council to hold the people practices very high? And that's where I say you have to be very dispassionate by telling what we are missing. Okay, the way a CFO will do it when you're faltering the same way a general counsel will do it when we are faltering on governance. So the same way CHRO should hold. That is the only responsibility. But the rest of ensuring the values are held very close in every decision we make is the collective leadership responsibility. How do you make it ensure that at every touch point of every one of our stakeholder, be it our vendors, be it our partners, be it our suppliers, be it our customers, our team members, in all of these stakeholders, how on their every touch point, how do you make decisions keeping values at the back of our mind is the leadership job. And we have to educate as leaders again and again and again to our team members. There is no getting away from that. You can't be treating culture like some pickle with the curd rice. Yeah, it's a main course. You might as well have it there, and work with it. It's not something tangy, something that you can play around with, and you have to be committed to it. So this topic is very passionate for me.
And those are some really interesting points that you also mentioned, especially the fact that the HR as a or I think the people function as a whole. I think one of the ways that it can really not just get a seat at the table, but start commanding things better is when they understand the business context also better. And I think Nishan had also discussed this in the very recent episode as well from season 1. So that was pretty interesting. Anyway, this sort of brings us to the close of this episode as well. Sunita, again, thanks a lot. It was brilliant having this conversation with you. Very insightful as well. Nisha, again, as usual, wonderful co-hosting this with you. Everyone, thanks again for tuning into this episode. We'll leave the links below to our social channels, and if you would like to connect with Sunita as well, feel free to do that. This is the Edge Podcast for CHRO. Thanks again.